Shalom Aleichem, Macharei Lekulam. I am just preparing my Monday class, and I thought, maybe this is interesting to some people. Some of it I've done already, and I'm just carrying on now. And I thought, maybe this is something that people would be interested in how I go about this, because some of this is fairly straightforward. You kind of I'll copy and paste a lot of the verses into the PowerPoint from Safaria, and then I kind of go through about color coordinating it. So some of the words are really obvious, like for example, tikra. You can see that the root here is kara, which is to call or to name, and we can see that there's a taf here, so we can see that this is being done by someone who's female, and also there's a vav here, which is a tense flipper. And so what that's doing is taking it from a future tense. Tikra on its own would be she will call. Vatikra means and she called. And then this is the object marker, so I don't do anything to that. I don't color the object marker. Shemo is his name. And so I'm going to color the vav at the end, which makes the O sound, because that's the one that makes it masculine possessive. So Shem is name and Shemo is his name, which means this is his name, and his name is Yosef. So what I do is I take proper nouns and I turn them purple so they jump out from the page. And then you don't start trying to translate this. I mean, you can translate this because Yosef means to add, right? In fact, that's why he's called Yosef, is because we see this verb down here. But we want to make a distinction between the name, which can be unpacked but doesn't need to be unpacked, and the verb, which needs to be understood. So V'tikra es shemo Yosef, and she called his name Yosef, lemor, to say. So the lamed here is a prefix, which means to or for, and in this case it's the infinitive of to say. Yosef is the verb Yosef, and the yod is not actually part of the root. The root is actually aleph samek, final fe. But because it's someone who is masculine or neutral doing the verb, we get a yod instead of a taf. So taf when it's feminine, and yod when it's masculine or neutral. And who's doing this verb? Well, we get the verb first, and then we get the the subject of the sentence who's doing the verb, and in that case it's Hashem. So this is actually, the reason I've colored this purple is because the yud, the hey, and also the vav, and also the hey, this is the tetragrammaton. This is, for one, this is the word we don't say, because we have such respect for Hashem that we wouldn't even pronounce his name unless you've got the Shekhinah in front of you, the presence of God in front of you, you're a high priest, you're ritually clean, you've brought your sin sacrifices and you libations, all this kind of stuff. Maybe under very extreme circumstances, you would then, be holy enough to say the name of God. But the rest of us are like, I'm never going to say this name because I'm never going to be on that level like a prophet. You don't want to. Anyway. So just out of due respect. And the thing about it is in Hebrew, in Judaism, language is very important, and especially the name of God. So say for example, Chas v'Shalom, we drop a book. The first thing we do is pick it up and kiss it, because language is the mechanism by which God spoke the world into existence. We put language very, very high. And what's the most important word in the whole of the language? It's the name of God. So this deserves more respect than any other thing in the whole language. So we don't say this name because we're saying like, this is so elevated that I can't even pronounce it. Like my mouth isn't clean enough to utter the name of God. So but I'll color it to signify this is what we're talking about. We're not saying this word, but we know what it is. And actually, it has a tendency to make us more careful about it. This is one of the few words which doesn't have a 3-letter root, because this isn't really a word. So every other word in the language has a 3-letter shoreish, a 3-letter verb root, but this isn't really a word because this is a prefix and a suffix. So the prefix lamed means to or for, and the yod here is short for ani, which is I. So this is to me or for me. So V'tikra es shemo Yosef, and she called his name Yosef, lemor, to say, because Yosef Adonai li, God added to me ben acher. Now, acher technically means afterwards, right? We have lifnei, achere. But in this case, it can also mean another. Like, for example, in the Shema, we're told we cannot pray to Elokim acherim. It literally means gods afterwards, but what we're using it figuratively is to say other gods, because any god other than God would come afterwards, because God is the prime mover, it's the first existence. So anything except God is afterwards, secondary, subsequent. So acher can be afterwards, or it can mean another. So Yosef Hashem li, God gave or added to me ben acher, another son. So that's why he's called Yosef. So every time you see Yosef, we relate it back. There's also another person with the same roots to their name, which is the psalmist Asaph, the prophet Asaph, which is the same root, but in this case it's Yosef. In the case of prophet, it's the actual root. So then we have Vayihi. Now the root of this word is Haya, Hove, Yeh, and this is Yehi, which is the same as Yeh, but without the second Hey. So the Yod here I'm going to turn green because it signifies he or it is doing it, the masculine or the neutral. If it was she, it would be Tiyeh. And then we have this word here, Asher, means that or which. So generally what it means is you're about to get more information about this word. And it was, now kaf as a prefix is short for kamo, which means like. So v'yihi kasher, and it was like that, yalda. Now the shoreish of this word, the one that gives its name to the branch, is the 3-letter verb root, but the one in particular that names the whole branch is the third person masculine or neutral past tense, the he did past tense, right? So we start with that version of the verb, and in order to change to who did it, so we can change it to present tense and future tense from the past tense, we can change it to masculine plural and feminine singular or feminine plural. We add letters and we change the vowels to change the intensity and the circumstances. So yalda, just without the hey, without this, yalad would be he bore a child. So how do you make it feminine? Well, you add a feminine hey, and that makes it a feminine verb. So ka'asher yalda, like that she gave birth. Rachel. Okay, so what are we saying? Well, and it was like that Rachel gave birth es Yosef. So this is the name Yosef, so we're going to turn it purple, right? So Rachel is Rachel and Yosef is Yosef, so she's the mother of Yosef. V'yomer. So what I want to do is I want to pick out this vav here because this is a tense flipping vav. And then we're going to take out this yod here and turn it green because the green prefix is the one that tells us who's doing the verb. So yomer, v'yomer means and he said. Okay. If it was and she said, it would be v'tomer. Okay. Or amra. It was another way to do it. Just like yalda, you could also say amra. And this is Yaakov. So we need to turn this purple. And then we know, because we get the verb first and then the subject, v'yomer Yaakov means Jacob said, and it says El Lavan. So this is who he's talking to. Is El is in this case is 2, and Lavan is his uncle. So V'yomer Yaakov El Lavan is saying Jacob is speaking to Lavan, and what he says is what comes afterwards. Shalcheni. Now I know that shalach is to send. Okay. And ani means I. So this looks like send me, but I'm not certain. So I'm going to go to the thing. That's just I'm watching some TV. Please ignore the TV that I'm watching. So this isn't in order. Oh no, here it is. Shalcheni. Okay, so let's go to the root, right? We go shalach, it's to send. Absolutely, that's what we thought it was. My phone keeps on buzzing. Sorry about that. And so, okay, he's saying, give me leave to send back to my homeland. So shalacheni is send me. So that was what I suspected, but I thought that's not right. So shalach is to send, and shalacheni is send me. So I'm just going to color the ani as purple. As blue, because it's a suffix which is telling us who's doing it, and then that shows that in black is the shoreish, the 3-letter verb root. So v'yomer Yaakov el Lavan shlacheni. So this is a weird place to break the verse, because in the previous verse it's talking about she's naming her son because of this reason, and then it finishes and it was like that she had this son Yosef, and then it shifts to a completely different subject. Yom Yaakov El Levan Shalcheni. Now, why does it break there? Because the verse breaks are artificial. They're not from us. They've been added like thousands of years after the Torah is written. Really, the Torah is kind of, it's almost as if it's one long sentence. You know, we break it into books and we break it into chapters and verses now, but you just got to ignore those breaks because it's not natural. They're not natural. We're better to think in terms of parshiot because that's been considered by the Rabbonim, and they have a much better sense of how the Torah should be broken up. But don't worry about where the verse breaks things because it's not really as important. Ve'elcha el makomi. Well, makom is a place, and makomi is the first person possessive. So I'm going to turn that blue because it's my place. So it's to my place. So this must be this must be holech. The root of this is holech. So the hey is a little bit weak and it's disappeared. And the aleph here is, we're going to turn it green. So just like when we had the taf in the previous, this is when she will do the verb, and then the vav flips it, she did the verb. This is when he will do the verb, right? And this is when he will do the verb and it flips into the past. This is when I will do the verb. So in the case that there's an aleph prefix, it's I will do, and then the vav makes it past tense, but it's not doing that in this case, it's leaving it in the future tense. So elcha, I will go, el makomi, to my place, and so in this case this is not a tense flipper because it's not a verb. The lamed is 2 or 4, so we'll turn that blue just to signify it. And aretz is land. So this is the root, and then the yod on the end makes it my land. So we'll turn that blue, just like we had shlachani and we had makomi. Makom is place, and makomi is my place. Aretz is land, and aretzi is my land. Pop a little save in there. So send me to my land. Tana es neshe. So this word here has got a weak letter missing. So the weak letters most often are hey and nun. So there is a nun missing from here, which would make this notain haTorah. This is notain. So tana is to give, es nashi. Now notice he's not saying nashim sheli. He's saying nashi. So he's mentioning one wife, really. Now, actually, it'll translate it as wives, but the direct translation is give me my it says, yeah, see? It says give me my wives, but here it just says nashi, which is my wife. So that's interesting. Isha doesn't say how it can be wives plural, but okay, let's accept it. Tana is notain haTorah. So this is notain, and in this case it's tana, right? So actually, there's the nun is missing. But this is the reason it's a taf. This is interesting. So actually there's a nun and a taf missing from here, because this taf here is actually, although it's part of the root, it's also the future instructive, because what it turns out is the taf generally means she will do it or did it, right? But the other time you can use a taf for who's doing it is when you're instructing someone else. So God does this all the time. He's talking to, prophets and avot. He talks to them in the feminine and says, you're going to do this, you're going to do this. And he uses the taf instead of the yod. Now, he's not actually calling them women. What he's doing is he's using the polite way of speaking. So when he tells her they're going to do something, he speaks it almost in the feminine character, because the way to speak to a woman is the gentle, polite, respectful, or at least it should be. That's how you should speak to women in the polite form. So when you tell someone to do something, also you should do it in the polite form. So tana es nashi ve'es. Now this s here, this is the object marker. So it's telling us what is being done to. So if the verb is to give, and he's telling him to give, what is he giving? The object es nashi, my wives. Ve'es Yaladi, which is Yeled is a son, and then the yod on the end means mine. Now, the Torah, the translation told us this was plural. This will also be plural because he's got a bunch of sons. Asher. So my sons that avadati. Aha. Now, the verb avad is to serve. Like an eved is a servant, and avoda is service. But what does it mean when you put a taf yod on the end of a verb? That makes it first person past tense. Okay. So avadati is I served. So tana es nashe is give me my wives. Ve'es yaladai, and my sons asher that avadati I worked otcha. Now, this isn't itka, which would be with you. This is otcha, which is the passive pronoun. So basically, whenever you're active, you can use the passive. I would be ani, he would be who, she would be he, ata, you. But there's a version of this where the person you're talking to is passive. So if I'm passive, if you're doing a verb to me, then I'm, instead of being ani, I'm ot, right? If I'm doing a verb to you, and you're masculine, then instead of being ata, you are otcha, or instead of being at, you're otech. Instead of being who, which is he, you'd be oto. Instead of being she, which is he, it would be ota. And there's a different version for every single person. So them is otem when they're passive. So it's hem when they're active and otem when they're passive. So he's saying, I worked you. I served you, because it's not really work. It's not malacha or anything. It's not, and it's avad. It's I served otcha. I served you, right? Behen. Now, this is a compound as well. So the b is in or with, and the hen is them, feminine plural. Okay, so but let's just check that actually, because I'm always susceptible to mistakes. Behen, hen, there, these, yeah. Now notice it's feminine though. So he's talked about his sons. He's got a daughter now, Dina as well. But he's really focusing on the wives at this stage. Behen. Otherwise he would say behem, because the mixed plural would be hem, right? So I served you with them. It's really saying for them, but that should be lahen, for them, but it's behem, which is with them. They didn't, well, maybe they worked as well. Kids wouldn't have worked because they're still, most of them are still babies. Va elecha. He's repeating that he wants to go because the aleph is short for ani, so that's future tense of that. Lech holech is to go. Ki ata yadata. Now yada is knowledge, and the ending here ta is what you do for you. Masculine singular, right? So you masculine singular is ata. So ata yadata. Ata yadata. So the ending is matching who's doing it. So yada is knowledge or to know, and yadata is you know. So you is ata, yadata is. Now if you're feminine, which is at, you'd say yadat. But because it's masculine, which is ata, you say yadata. So because ki ata yadata, because you know what? Es avodati. So of course this is the same word as we encountered a minute ago. Eved oved, to serve. Ovedati is I served. Asher, that. Avadaticha. So again the T, put it on the end of the, I'm going to use two different blues for this just to make a distinction between the two different suffixes. So I'll use a very light blue just to make a distinction here. So avadati is I served, and ka is you. So I served you. I'm going to stop the recording there because you don't want to listen to me all day. But that just gives you an example of how I kind of break down the verse and then I'll go, I keep on checking. If I come across a word I don't know, I'll use Safari's beautiful dictionary or other dictionaries. I've got a bunch of physical dictionaries there. So say, for example, if I didn't know artsy, ula artsy, and to my land, you double click it and you get eretz, right, land. And if there are any other definitions, well, you get a bunch of references to where this can be found. Let's take something more. Let's just zoom out somewhere, grab random thing. Ki davarecha. So davar is the root. Ki probably means like, and cha is you, like you say. Okay, so let's look at the root. The root is davar, speech, word, speaking, thing, speech, right? So yehi kedavadecha is like, it will be like you said. So that's how that's how I kind of go through, and that gives you a glimpse of how this works. Thank you very much for your time. Bye.